If you've been paying attention to sports media recently, you might have seen that North Korea has been caught broadcasting Premier League games on their official state television program. Now, they're not doing it quite in the way you'd expect. First of all, none of the matches are live, of course, they're all from about 6 months ago. And they're also not showing full 90-minute matches, they've edited down the matches to just about 60 minutes for easier viewing. Another quirk of the North Korean broadcast is that they won't show any matches involving South Korean players. So for North Korean citizens, that means no Tottenham Hotspur, no Wolves, and no Brentford. I think another thing that is fairly safe to say is that the Premier League has probably not offered North Korea broadcasting rights, but I also doubt the Premier League will be sending lawyers after them anytime soon. But all of this does raise interesting questions about the state of football in North Korea, and specifically its domestic game.
경애하는 김성은 동지께서
A tower in tribute to Kim's personal philosophy, higher than the Washington Monument.
난적인 도전을 짚으시며
I'm sure we all remember their remarkable outing at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, where although they lost all 3 of their group stage games, just making the World Cup was a remarkable achievement in itself, something Ireland could look at replicating in the near future, hopefully. Less of us will remember their only other World Cup outing, where they reached the quarter-finals in 1966, ultimately knocked out by Eusebio's Portugal in a 5-3 thriller. However, their domestic game remained something of a mystery. The Hermit Kingdom is one of the most isolated and mysterious countries in the world, although some news does leak out here and there, allowing us to piece together how the domestic game works just north of the 38th parallel. Organised football in North Korea began to take shape in 1960 with the foundation of the country's technical innovation contests, although at this stage the game was still amateur, and these contests actually showcased a variety of sports, not just football. The footballing element of these competitions would typically begin in February and run until about June, with teams competing across 3 divisions. These divisions were the first tier team league, the second tier team league, and the third tier team league, which by the third tier was mostly factory teams and university teams. And despite there being teams located across North Korea, the majority of the country's football clubs are based in the capital city of Pyongyang, so all of these games would be played in Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Stadium, although the government would cover the travel costs of teams that were located outside of the capital city. It seems that upon conclusion of the technical innovation contest in June, a league champion would be crowned, and the top 6 would also qualify for a knockout cup tournament in the autumn called the Republic Championship. This would take place across September and October and would also take place in Pyongyang in Kim Il-sung Stadium. Now, in 1977, football in North Korea was reformed, with teams becoming professional for the first time, but not much else appears to have changed. It's pretty difficult to find details of domestic football from this time in North Korea's history. One thing we do know is that all the clubs and teams that would take part in these contests would be affiliated to some branch of the government or the military. For example, the most successful club in North Korea, April 25th, is affiliated with the Korean People's Army. In fact, its name is the date of the formation of the KPA. But it's not the only team affiliated with the KPA. There's also Ryomyang and Sobeksu, and while you have other clubs like Pyongyang who are affiliated with the Workers' Party of Korea, you also have Amrokang who are affiliated with the Ministry of Social Security. This is very similar to how football would have been in the past in other communist countries, like China or the Soviet Union, where clubs would often be affiliated with either army units or interior ministries or whatever workplace could put together a team. Like was the case in China and Soviet Russia, I'm sure these affiliations lead to some heated rivalries between government teams and army teams, although once again, I can't find specific information about this for North Korea. In 2010, the structure of North Korean football was changed dramatically with the formation of the North Korean High Class Football League, or the NKHCFL for short, kind of. This league was formed by merging both the technical innovation contests and the Republic Championship into one league system, and for the first time they adopted a home and away double round robin system with 10 teams competing. The league was renamed to the DPR Korea Premier Football League in 2017, which has remained its name to this day. Other than the name, not much has changed. It is reported that the partaking clubs are not allowed to have any foreign players, foreign coaches, any foreign sponsors, any jersey advertising at all. In fact, the only known sponsor of North Korean football is Taedong River Beer, a locally brewed beer, which sponsors the entire league itself.
자랑 대동강 맥주.
As I said earlier, April 25th are North Korea's most successful club with a whopping 25 titles to their name. However, despite this, North Korean participation in international club competitions has been relatively few and far between. Due to the peculiarities of the North Korean league setup, the league champions were not deemed eligible to participate in the continent's premium competition, the AFC Champions League, by the Asian Football Confederation for a long time. In 2016, both North Korean champions and runners-up April 25th and Kigwansha respectively were invited to take part in the 2017 AFC Cup, Asia's equivalent of the Europa League. April 25th managed to make it out of the group stages before being knocked out by India's Bengaluru FC. This would represent the first of 3 years of North Korean participation in the AFC Cup, although they haven't been seen on the international club stage since 2019, pre-COVID. While North Korean football and North Korea in general may prevent outside elements from entering, they're less strict about North Korean elements from going and plying their trade abroad. One of the most notable of these is probably Park Kwang-ryung, who forged a career in Europe, spending 5 years with Basel in Switzerland, and even making an appearance against Manchester United in the Champions League, marking the first and potentially only occasion a North Korean player has faced off against a South Korean in European football. Domestic football in North Korea gets a bit more interesting when you factor in the fact that most of the top teams have to balance national team demands. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that, hey, it's the same in European football. Liverpool have to do this, Madrid have to do this, Bayern Munich have to do this. But once again, like everything else, North Korea does things a little bit more differently. North Korea's national teams at all levels still implement long-term intensive training. This is the same as was the case in China before their professional reform. What this entails is every year the national team draws players from local areas and centralises them for coaching and development. Many of these players selected for the national team belong to local club sides, and even when the North Korean club sides are involved in league and cup matches, the national team players do not return to participate. While they're with the national team, the government is responsible for accommodating and feeding these players, and while reports are that meat may be scarce, by all accounts these players are pretty well fed when they're with the national setup. This brings us to the living conditions generally for North Korean footballers, as it seems that depending on what team you're affiliated with, there'll be a different set of benefits that you might get. Obviously, national team players have no living costs, as while they're with the national team, the government is covering their accommodation and food expenses. But it does seem that there's a variety of benefits that you can get depending on what club you play for. For example, there are reports that players who play for teams associated with the KPA, such as April 25th, benefit from a superior diet, better personal treatment, and much better training equipment when compared with the rest of the league. Reportedly, North Korean footballers were amongst the first civilians to gain access to mobile phones in the country. Obviously, these weren't top-of-the-line iPhones or Android phones, but rather special government-issued North Korean phones, but it was a luxury nonetheless. Even as a footballer, however, luxuries like cars in North Korea reportedly remain out of reach, as cars are a symbol of status. Even the top players can't have one. However, they can sometimes enjoy free rides on the Pyongyang subway and trolleybus, while ordinary civilians have to pay around 5 North Korean won for the same privilege. While I was researching this video, one of the most interesting things I came across was in regards to the women's team. Now, while I would have assumed that the state of the game in North Korea, domestically at least, in regards to the league and stuff would be pretty similar, there was one key difference between the two. While the North Korean men's national team lingers in 115th place according to the FIFA World Rankings, North Korea's women's team is ranked in 9th place at the time of recording. A phenomenal achievement really when you consider the difficulties that North Korean citizens face generally. They are ranked 11 places ahead of South Korea's women's team, who occupy 20th place in the world rankings. And having won the Under-17 and Under-20 World Cup, one would have to question why the women's team is so good, not just compared to the men's team, but compared to other women's international teams. There are apparently 2 key reasons for the good fortune of the North Korean women's national team. The first, and probably most importantly, is that North Korea have treated the women's game with the respect it deserves, a respect that has been lacking from a lot of other countries up until recently. As the story goes, at the 1986 FIFA Congress, Norwegian Ellen Wille gave a speech, being the first woman to ever do so, and, infuriated, demanded that FIFA treat the women's game with more respect and grant them a Women's World Cup. Her speech clearly had the desired impact because FIFA agreed, and this set a plan in motion for the North Korean delegates in the room. It is likely that they return to North Korea and present this as an opportunity to show up and perform on the world stage in front of everyone else. The plan was simple. Formal training would begin in schools at an early age, scouts would be sent across the country, and for the best performers, a central school of excellence and a number of army teams would be created, allowing them to train and develop full-time at the state's expense. It is reported that players who made the national team will be gifted an apartment in Pyongyang, which would lead to not just dramatic improvements in their own quality of life, but also in the quality of life of their families. And with these kind of benefits, training infrastructure, grassroots support, and no doubt a little bit of pressure from the state, it's no wonder that the women's team have had so much success. But with their borders closed due to COVID, North Korean national teams have only recently returned to top-level international sport, so we're still yet to see the true impact that these high-performing youth teams can have at that next level senior stage. Well, I've tried to be as accurate as I possibly can with the information I've used in this video. Unfortunately, it can be a bit of a guessing game due to the lack of information coming out of the country. I've used a variety of sources, from North Korean reports themselves to the BBC to reports in Chinese media. However, while these reports may have been accurate at the time, it's also fully possible that a lot of this information is by now outdated. We still don't know the full impact of the pandemic on North Korea generally, let alone their football league. But until more information comes out, this is as accurate a view as I can give you into an otherwise closed off world. So if you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to see what I've coming next, and leave a comment if you have any future ideas for videos that I can look into.